Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and no, your your screen is not broken. There's no webcam tonight because we're going to be looking at a cold case file, and I've been getting requests to do this sort of thing for quite some time. We did it last year, 2017. Did a couple of these cold case streams, and they've been highly requested ever since. So, finally decided to pull my head out of my ass and decide to look into a couple of these things. Tonight we're going to be looking at the famous Keddie murders. This is an incident that happened way back in the day, just to kind of refresh my information here. This happened on April 11th and 12th of 1981. So this particular cold case is coming up on 4 decades, and I have a feeling that it's going to be interesting because it's talked about pretty often, and I'm hoping that we I'm hoping that we get some good stuff out of this one. All right, okay. Let me see where we at here. Let me send the links out to everyone. That way they can see it. Make sure we're in the right thing. I might actually be on the wrong window of this particular one here. My chat window might actually be the wrong URL. Give me a hot moment to fix that, because apparently I can't do this very well, or do this super good. There we go. Hey, what's going on, guys? Okay, there you are. There you are. I see. I have the wrong window up in the chat. It's from another one. Hold on a hot minute. Let me fix that. Okay. Hopefully this will work. It maybe will work. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. Awesome stuff. Yeah, good to know. I'm just going to quickly post on social media about this. All right. So we'll have to. Oh shit, that did not go the way that I wanted it to. Son of a bit. It's definitely an odd. There we go. Okay. Cool beans. Looks like we're at least we're locked and loaded in that regard. Let me post this on Twitter and yep, that should be good. Cool. Okay. Okay. I figured this would be about an hour, right? This is more just for fun to see what's going on. Because I haven't done this kind of stuff in a while. So yeah, Buckshot. I like cold case files. I like all this stuff. I like to see what's happening with the cases. This is nearly a 40-year-old case. So obviously we're going to be looking at a few things here that are going to be old, right? It's going to clearly be old, but I don't think it's not in the realm of being interesting. So this isn't about Bill Cosby. No, of course it's not about Bill Cosby. Oh, Motormouth, you were just watching the Overwatch video? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Who are these two fuckers? That's a very good question, Rachel. That's a very good question, and we will take a look at that here. So this is from right now, essentially, the suspects in the Keddie murders. And according to Wikipedia, because we're going to be going through a whole bunch of articles, a few articles at least, that maybe fill up an hour to get a good solid understanding of what happened here. Now, the Keddie murders is an unsolved 1981 American quadruple homicide that happened in Keddie, California. The murders took place in Cabin 28 of the Keddie Resort during the late evening in April 11th, 1981, or early the following morning. The victims were Glenna Sue Sharp, known as Sue, age 36, her son John, age 15, his friend Dana Wingate, age 17, and sometime after the crime was discovered, Sue's daughter Tina was reported missing. Her skull and several other bones were discovered 3 years later in Camp 18, California, which is in Butte County. That's hardcore, man. That's fucking hardcore. So just off the bat here, You've got Sue, her son John, his friend, and her daughter taken from this cabin 28 of a resort in the late evening. Now, I mean, right off the bat, if I were to guess, just kind of speculate, just right off the bat, you know, for me, my first guess is like, where's the dad? Where's the father? Right? Because the daughter being taken, that's something. But then again, it could have just been, you know, a pedophile or something, a really horrible scumbag. So that could have been something too. I don't know yet. I don't know, but we'll see what we find out. Now, the murders. Sue Sharp and her 5 children had been renting a cabin since November 1980. At approximately 7:45 in the morning on April 12th, Sharp's 14-year-old daughter Sheila returned home from a sleepover next door and discovered the tied-up bodies of Sue, John, and Dana in the home's living room. Plumas County Detective deputies later determined Tina Sharp was missing from the location. The murders have been commented upon for their particular viciousness. Well, obviously, I mean, if a 14-year-old's coming home and she's discovering the tied-up bodies of you know, her mom, her brother, and her brother's friend, there's probably going to be a fair amount of viciousness there. After approximately 4,000 man-hours spent on the case, it grew cold, but in 1984, a cranium portion of a skull was discovered near Feather Falls in neighboring Butte County, a distance of roughly 63 miles or 2 hours and 12 minutes from Keddie. Shortly after announcing the discovery, Butte County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous call which identified the remains as belonging to Tina, but the call was not documented in the case. A recording of this call was found at the bottom of an evidence box at some point after 2013 by a deputy who was assigned to the case. Now, why is that? Why is it that a call was placed to identify who this body belonged to, who this person was, and then ultimately let go, and just kind of like shoved under the rug, right? That's kind of what it feels like here. It feels like it's shoved under the rug on this one. But then again, you hear about this kind of stuff all the time where, I mean, human error plays a large portion of how these things kind of play out. Now, as of November 2017, no arrests have been made in connection with the Keddie murders, although 2 suspects who had criminal records, now deceased, have been proposed. In 2004, Cabin 28 was demolished. And this is the hardest thing when it comes to this particular type of story. Very similar to the Zodiac, where the guy who wrote the book, you know, he believed who he thought was the killer. And I mean, obviously now, because this happened in the late 1960s and into the early 70s, that's, you know, the people are dead, or they're getting up there in years. I mean, the Golden State Killer, him being caught as a result of DNA testing from 23andMe and Ancestry.com, very much is interesting. Now, it says here, on March 24th, 2016, a hammer matching the description of a hammer suspect, Martin Smart, said he lost shortly before the murders, was taken into evidence by Plumas County Special Investigator Mike Gamberg. Sheriff Hagwood stated the location it was found, it would have been intentionally put there. It would not have been accidentally misplaced. I mean, leave it to Wikipedia to just give you a brief overview of what's going on, because there's really like nothing else here. But thankfully, we've got a website that's dedicated to this. But first, before we go in there, I want to kind of know what you guys think here. What are your initial thoughts? We don't have much to go on, obviously. We're looking at very basic, very brief information. But at the same time, you know, if it's Sue and her 5 children have been renting a cabin for 6 months, right? 6 months at this Keddie resort. Now, that tells me that it was clearly someone who knew them. It was clearly someone who knew what would be, you know, it was a Friday night, right? So it'd be less people around, right? The one girl was off. The one girl was taken. But obviously, to me, it says that there was something there that someone knew them, someone watched them. Now, granted, I haven't looked into this case before, so obviously, anything could go a completely different direction based upon the relevant available information. So what we got here is this website. It is the Keddie case, Cabin 23. It's Keddie28.com. This is a website that is all about the Keddie case. And I figured this would be a good one to go through here to give us an idea of what it looked like and everything else. So what we have is we have got about the Cabin 28 Keddie Murders case. Let me just do one thing real quick because I want to make sure. Okay, that's off. Hold on. There. Okay, there we go. I can, oops. That's not what I wanted there. Oh, come on, you bastard. Come on, you bastard. Where's that at? There we go. Okay. Make sure the chat doesn't get fucked up. So we can take a look at this whole thing here. You know what I should really go and get like some creepy background music to play during this. If anyone knows any open source music, let me know. We'll take a look. I think they'll be pretty interesting. And okay, where the fuck is my screen? Nope, wrong one. Right one. Okay. So on the night of April 11th or 12th, 1981, Sue and her kids, Tina and John, and John's friend Dana were brutally murdered inside Cabin 28 in Keddie, California. Surrounded by drug traffickers and sexual predators, dozens involved, preferably, I can't ever pronounce that word, involved in the case had motive, if not opportunity. Law enforcement immediately zeroed in on prime suspects, yet this hot case was intentionally made to quickly grow cold. Okay, so obviously there's a little bit of hyperbole from the person writing this, you know, trying to set the stage of someone making this go away, someone making this go cold for no other reason than we don't know, but it was clearly something. Why was Marty Smart the main suspect, the local sheriff's close friend? Why did a hitman enforcer for the Chicago and Vegas mob, Bo Bubete, move in with Smart just prior to the murders? Why were corrupt DOJ organized crime agents immediately assigned to this rural case? Unless law enforcement already knew about Bo, why did both the Department of Justice and Sheriff Doug Thomas skate these key suspects when their joint alibis laughably sipid lies? Wouldn't that be like, okay. Why was Marty's then wife, Marilyn Musgrove, at least a key conspirator, if not a murderer, not arrested? Why did law enforcement agencies conspire to cover up this case? What were the killers involved in that law enforcement decided to protect them and themselves? So what we can see here is that there's clearly bias. All right, clearly bias. So there's definitely that. Yeah, Kevin McLeod is a great way. Incompetech.com. My outro, the Aurora Boris is what I use from Incompetech. So let's take a look here at the crime scene. Okay. So this is the Keddie Murders crime scene. Let's see what pops up here. Okay. So what we're looking at right now, what appears to be the outline or the blueprint, schematics, if you will, of the Cabin 28. So we can see that the screened porch is up here to the top. That's obviously the doorway to come on in. There was a little refrigerator right there next to the door, a table. Oh no, this was a screened porch. It looks like a backyard, like a back door. Stairway down, part of the cabin. Okay. You've got the kitchen dining area. You've got a little hallway area. Or was it hallway? It moves into the kitchen dining area, and the living room might just be one connected room, it looks like. 3 cushion hide-a-bed sofa, okay. Seat atop, what was it? Okay, so I can't read some of this stuff. TV stand, a wood table, what appears to be another TV stand, a decent-sized room. Then you've got a bedroom up here to the top right. The rear bedroom with the bed, a TV tray, and another bed. So 2 beds in the room, a closet. Then next to that is the bathroom. Then you've got a sleeping cot over in the boys' bedroom on the one wall there, and then bunk beds. Okay, so if we have Sue and her 5 kids that are sleeping in this particular place, what you've got probably is in the boys' bedroom, you've got what appears to be a cot and bunk bed. So that sleeps 3. The 2 girls probably get the top bedroom up here, the rear bedroom. They probably get that. And then you've got the 3 cushion hide-a-bed, which is probably what Sue slept on. My mom and I used to, my mom was single. We had a 1-bedroom mobile home, and she slept on a hide-to-bed sofa, and I slept in the bedroom. So yeah, this is where I'm coming from. I think that's probably, probably what it is. So, that's what we got right there in terms of just the layout of the house. So this looks like Sheriff Thomas and unknown inspect the front wallpaper where blood smudge was found. The wall panel was among those taken into evidence. Note the picture of Johnny on the bookshelf behind the front door. Okay, Johnny right there. Johnny's one of the sons who died, so that's a picture of him right to the left, little lower left of the doorknob right there on the door. Taking a look here. Okay, so this is blood on the front interior doorknob, highlights in red. Okay. I don't know if the highlights in red are coming from the person who made this website, but if there's blood smears on the doorknob, that's definitely going to be an indicator that there's some foul play. Never mind the fact that there were bodies that were tied up, so obviously there was. Now the living room here, looking at the front door towards the kitchen, note the removed wall panels resting against the kitchen partition, and the portions of bloodstained carpet taken in the evidence. The TV table in the foreground holds the hamster cage. Beyond that is the trunk, on top of which is a chair table combo. The gray area is a tabletop, dirty from fingerprint dust. The phone removed as evidence was there off the hook. The phone wire had also been cut from the rear wall of the girl's room where it originated. Now, I don't know if that means that whoever the killer is the person who cut the phone cord. But if the phone was off the hook, I'm pretty certain that whoever did it took the phone off the hook then, and maybe the police just cut the cord. That would make more sense, I guess. Beyond the chair is a wooden table which held laundry and clothing and Sheila's band flute. This is where the killers placed the wiped hammer and butcher knife used in the attacks. All right, we'll find out more about that, I'm sure, as we go through this. This is a soft pack of Camel regulars left on the couch by killers. Unfortunately, I'm pretty certain that there's no DNA to be collected from that. Not much, at least. Maybe fingerprints, but I don't know how the DNA worked back then. If they would have been able to find cigarette butts, they could have maybe gotten some saliva DNA off of that, which has been used in other cases before. What you have here is the phone that's off the hook. The phone cord was cut from the wall in the girl's bedroom. The cord wound up and placed on the living room floor. The receiver was also taken off the base. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong in what I was talking about before. Maybe the phone cord was actually used as a binding material. Maybe they weren't anticipating as many people being there. Maybe they weren't anticipating all that, and that's why they needed to find something to tie the people down. This hasn't specified that yet, but it's entirely possible. What you have here is the wall behind the chair and pet cage had blood spatter and knife marks. Look, I just want to point out the fact that the writer of this website actually used the proper terminology by using blood spatter. Oftentimes people say, oh, it's blood splatter. No, it's spatter. There's the two different terms there. But you can see, even though this is a black and white image, you can clearly see that there are spatter marks on the wall. What appears to be not what I'd call a cast-off pattern. A cast-off pattern is what you would see from a knife attack. Or, well, it's where like upon first impact with the blade, and the removal of the blade, there's not a lot of blood, but the repeated stabbing is when you start seeing like the cast-off patterns on the wall, the long streaks of blood. That's usually from repeated stabbings and those situations. We're not really seeing that here, which appears the spatter on the wall to me would indicate that this is probably the result of what would happen from a hammer hitting somebody repeatedly, which if there was a hammer that was used, and we've already kind of gone over that a wee bit, I would argue that this is probably the result of the hammer. Now, there we go. There's the hammer right there. So the murder weapons, a hammer and butcher knife from the cabin, were left on a living room table by the killers. Why would they leave the hammer? Why would they sit there and leave that stuff behind? I know they probably wiped it off and everything else. And I mean, even in the 1970s or the 1980s, DNA and forensic technology was nowhere near as good as it is now. But I mean, at the same time, Jesus Christ, you know. So this is the displaced TV. It normally faced towards the couch, which is to the far right It was found pointing roughly the direction seen here, with the card table leaning against it. Law enforcement inexplicably moved several objects, including the TV and table, before taking this photo. While the TV was covered in fingerprint dust, note the several marks on the folded table, which appear to be blood splatter. Well, she screwed up there. She got it right. And then I'm assuming, I don't know why. I think this is written by a woman, but whoever wrote it got a little bit right and screwed up there. Okay, so you do see a little bit of blood spatter on the card table, but again, those are smaller droplets. Basically means that it's coming out from a little bit further of a distance. So yeah, Rachel, you would figure they'd want to get rid of the murder weapon, but at the same time, this is not as they're just, who knows why they didn't do it. Okay, so what we have here is magazines and the jacket determining to belong to Johnny in the living room floor. The corner of the couch is seen in the top left. Okay, that's obviously the top corner over here. And then that's his stuff, so there's really not much there to talk about. What you got here is the boy's bedroom, from which was removed the morning after the crime. The boy's bedroom window, which was removed after the crime. Would that be because that's how they entered into the house? Is there that? I don't know. But again, kind of my point there, as I pointed out before from looking at the schematic, you would see the bunk beds and the boys were sharing a room right there. So yeah, but coming in, I mean, look at the bed frame. Look at the bed frame. If the window was removed after the morning after the crime, is that like how they got in or how they got out? I have no idea. But it appears, if this is an untouched thing, given the location of the curtain here, you could see that this would be more of a maybe a coming in. I don't know. They would be hard. That frame there kind of blocking part of the window is a little bit weird to me. I don't know why, but it kind of sticks out. Here you've got the blood on the girl's bedroom door. Tina's bed was to the left of the door, and a sheet on her bed also had a blood droplet on it. Okay, so they also mentioned earlier that the phone cord was cut from the wall in the girl's room, so maybe this is what the killers are looking for. They were looking for something. They may be ransacking the house, who knows. But Tina was the one who was taken, so maybe Tina was hiding during this time, and they went in there to grab her. But based upon just the blood, there would have been blood on their clothing. There would have been blood everywhere. So, I mean, well, maybe not, because there's that photo showing that there was blood. There was parts of the carpet that were removed because of the blood. So maybe, I mean, if a brutal killing was going to happen like that, if they were going to bludgeon them to death and stab them to death, I feel like there would be more blood, right? I just feel like there's not a lot of blood for, a quadruple homicide. Or, well, really, it's 4 people or 3 people inside. So triple homicide inside the cabin and a girl being taken. I feel like there's a lot of missing blood here, which is very weird. This is the cabinet door, most likely from under the kitchen sink. Interesting, and that there's a fair amount of blood there that might have come from, if it's under the kitchen sink, maybe they were washing or something. They're looking for something, cleaning supplies, and they got it everywhere. And this is bloody prints found on the bottom post of the stairwell leading to the cabin's back door. So this looks like how they got out. Maybe how they got in and maybe how they got out. But that kind of, I mean, if it's there, that's there. This might have been probably how they grabbed Tina and got Tina out of there. Would have been that. So there's definitely that. Oh, the Ben C. Are you leaving? Oh, you don't like true crime? Oh, good, you can't troll. Let's see. There's a footprint that was found behind cabin 28 several days after the murders. I mean, California, you're looking at, if it's April, it's not going to be the wettest part, depending on where it's at. And finding a footprint that lasted that long, several days, I feel is a little bit weird. So there's definitely that. No, Ralph, I'm not taking over the exceptional detectives role. I'm just looking at, I like cold case files, and it's more fun to look at. I don't plan on solving anything. I just want to understand it. So this is a close-up of a child shoe print, which was found several days after the murders during the search for Tina. It was located about a mile north of cabin 28 beyond the Y trestle. It is not considered relevant to the case. Well, that's, I guess not. Maybe that's kind of interesting overall. So, That to me is kind of fascinating. So we've got the crime scene photos there. Let me make sure I get us back out to the main one here, because is there a home? I don't want autoplay. I want to get back out. Okay. I'll have to go back. It's not the best designed website on the planet, I'll tell you that. No, Ralph, I get that. No, if I was taking over for the exceptional detective, I'd be drunk and talking about Danny right now. So no, I'm just looking at a cold case file. So all right, those are the okay. So we've got the exterior is the next bit. So we're gonna just kind of run through these a little bit here, because I don't want to. These are kind of long, but we can get a good idea of what the house looks like on the outside, or what the cabin looks like. All right. So this is a news clipping of the photo of Cabin 28 taken shortly after the murders were discovered. The Sharps name sign hangs in the tree, offset horrifically by the crime scene notification posted in the picket fence gate. So they'd been there for a while. They'd been there for 6 months. We know they've been there for a bit. This is the cabin itself, the back end of it. So this is, this is the front of Cabin 28. Okay. It looks really, just in terms of the design of the cabin, it you know, like the wood in the front there makes it look like what is it? Hold on, you can see that the yard. Okay, the windows, the boys' bedrooms windows, faced and exited the front yard of the cabin. That's definitely something to consider. This is looking at the front door of 28. Circled in red is a large white house immediately across from the street from where the Bodenhams lived. Many people forgot this house existed, and many that should know better deny it did. So what this is referring to is potential witnesses that may have been overlooked in terms of the investigation. This is taken from near the top of Cabin 28's front yard. It shows the rear of Cabin 13 and two white outbuildings and the lodge in the distance. Okay, so the lodge is in the top left over here. And this is the front yard. These people were pretty close together. These cabins look like manufactured homes, you know, just kind of bundled together, which means that this is a relative tight-knit community for the most part, or people there are going to be relatively tight-knit. So, you know, people would have heard something if it happened in the middle of the night, if there had been noise. But that may have been why there wasn't a lot of blood. That may have been why they may have snuck in, grabbed them while they were sleeping, knocked them out, bludgeoned them later, and then it wasn't a huge deal. Obviously it could be anything. I have no idea. This is one of the windows, the boys' windows here. You can see the curtains match up from the other photo. And okay, this is the bedroom window that Sheila and James Seabolt used to remove the boys from the cabin the morning of the murders. Jamie also entered from the rear porch and looked around the cabin, but later denied it when asked by police. Note the tension wire dangling from the tree on the other side of the picket fence. It remains from prior maintenance, but is not related to the crime. Then I didn't see it because of the photo. So, they're talking about this right here on the left-hand side. It doesn't make any sense to me. So wait, they removed the boys' bodies from the cabin. They used the window to remove them? That seems very odd. Okay, so this is the front of the cabin. This looks like the back. Sorry, this is the back. Crime scene photo, 28 rear. Johnny's bedroom was accessed via the white door with the line of red paint, which led to the utility/laundry room. Johnny's bedroom took up the right side of the lower level. Note the telephone line coming in from the upper left, where it attached to the wall above the girl's window and entered the room near the floor. Also visible is the single white cloth and 3-wire clotheslines strung very low. The second cloth line dangling over the intact line was pulled down, perhaps by the killers. A lot of speculation here. We have no idea, but okay. So Johnny's bedroom is down there. Okay, so it's a dual level cabin, utility room, and a small little room that Johnny used, obviously because he was 15 and wanted privacy. I get that. Crime scene. Okay, this is the back stairwell, looking towards the rear of 27, cabin 27, obviously. Johnny's bedroom window is on the bottom right, covered by cardboard, probably as a crude insulator. Note the yellow drop light plugged into the rear of the cabin, hanging from stairwell support post. So here's something that's part of the timeline, but not on the current timeline by police. Says a witness in cabin 24 woke at 4 a.m. and saw the rear light turned on. It is the sole mention of a light at the rear of cabin 28 and is not mentioned by those in 16, who reportedly looked out their window in this direction after hearing muffled screams from this direction at roughly around 1:15 a.m. Okay, so if you're looking at the timeline here between 1 a.m. or 1:15 a.m. and 4 a.m., this light then somewhere turned on. It's definitely is something. So there's definitely that. Okay. All right. There's Sue's. What's this? Okay. Rear cabins between 27 and 28. Again, look how close these cabins are together. Right? Like, if there's going to be a brutal triple homicide, it's so fucking close together. It's so fucking close. So someone would have heard something. You know? Like, I mean, how we all know what, if you know, like, you're going to know. But someone said they heard muffled screams at about 1:15 in the morning. That was probably Tina at this point, is what I would assume. It's probably Tina that they would be looking at. So, all right. So here's a view from the from the rear of the stairs during the snow. Okay, so cabin 13 outbuilding on the left, cabin 28 in the center, cabin 27 on the right. This is from 2002. Oh yeah, because the building ended up being torn down in 2004. So okay. So again, looking how close these things are together. I think we've kind of seen. I'm scrolling through the top photos to see if there's anything worth looking at here. Obviously, it feels like, well, what's this one right here? Okay. So here we go. Many cabins and buildings were condemned by the county, and it's believed several cabins were torn down around the same time as 28, which is in 2004. So these cabins were clearly poorly designed, but it does kind of appear that whoever broke in had a solid understanding of them. If you look at some of the other cabins, like going back over here, you can see that many of these were kind of built very similar, as oftentimes they are. They're cookie cutter designs, which means if you knew where one thing was in one cabin, you generally knew where one thing was in another cabin. So that could be something that could be potential in this particular case. So okay, we don't need to spend more time on that one. All right. So let's take a look at the interior here. I find this to be interesting stuff. More stuff from the interior. This is the okay. So this is taken. You know, we don't even need to look at that really, because this is all stuff from 2002. Let's take a look at the. Let's go back to the home. All right, the Keddie Murders, good stuff. Okay, case files, Keddie Today, old Keddie. Let's just take a look at the case files here, because obviously the crime scene, there wasn't a lot there. There wasn't a great deal of stuff there that I felt was super crazy, you know. Okay, so my interpretation of at this point, looking at the crime scene photos, the lack of blood, clearly blood spatter, indicating that there was, you know, brutality used in the death of these three people. But at the same time, it's very weird to me that there's so little blood spatter. I mean, it flew, it went out there, so there was clearly impact made on the bodies, but there wasn't necessarily a great deal of excess blood, which means it wasn't like a brutal killing. It wasn't a repeated killing, like, or it wasn't a crime of passion is what I want to say. When you hear the stories of someone who was stabbed to death, like, you know, 47, 50 times or whatever, that's usually a crime of passion. If someone's enraged and they go and they kill them. So that's one of those weird things. We can do Elisa Lamb's at some point. I could do Elisa Lamb's. That's a fun one, because that story is fucking weird. But yeah, so ultimately that's what I'm looking at from this is, they snuck in. I think that if I'm being honest so far, my assessment so far has everything to do with, they came in as a way, they came in, I think to kidnap the girl. I think that's what I think happened. I think they killed everybody, and they kidnapped the girl. I don't think that it was, I think it was on purpose to kidnap the girl, but the way they did it came across as, I don't want to say professional, but there was the insinuation from the person who has this website that it's possible that there was, what did you say there? There was a hitter, right? there's a hitman and enforcer from the Chicago and Vegas mob, Bo Bobette, right? So here's the thing: if it's okay, if that is to be believed, right? If that's to be believed, then something here, tells me that like it was more of not like a clean hit, but more of a professional hit. And it was definitely probably planned and probably executed well. As odd as it seems. Okay, so let's take a look at the case files here, because apparently that's what we're working at here. So this is the FBI report. I don't know if we're going to be able to read these or not. The comment here. Are there any legible comments? Ah, shit. I'm not going to be able to read any of this. Okay. this well, maybe she hold on, maybe she translated it. I just didn't read the bottom part. Okay, well, here, we're going to go back through, because the woman, whoever wrote this, they summarize it. Now, it says here the FBI, hold on, I'm going to go back to the front one here. Okay, so this report is based on misinformation. Oh, God, Jesus. Misinformation sent to FBI's Quantico office, presumably by Plumas County Sheriff's Office and/or California DOJ, namely PA Mike Krim and Harry Bradley. Krim and Bradley were immediately dispatched to Plumas to take over the case, yet both were organized crime special agents. That is interesting. If that is true, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, this feels like an Evil Dead thing, right? Totally. Now this shit's fucking completely illegible, but we'll read the summaries if I could keep the damn thing to work properly. It says here the FBI were told Dana's throat had been ripped out with a claw hammer, which is false, and I agree with that. However, they do make it clear that the killers brought the weapons to the crime scene. PCSO/DOJ claim all weapons came from the inside, or inside 28, which is complete bullshit. Well, I mean, having a butcher knife and a hammer in a house, a cabin, is not going to be something that's out of, the knife isn't that big. It was a standard butcher knife. It's not like a cleaver, like having a cleaver left behind in a place like that could be suspicious, but a butcher knife, not really. And a hammer, like in a place that's, nearly 30 years later was essentially, it was torn down. It was torn down, like 24 years later, because it was essentially, these items were condemned, or these places were condemned. So you tell me that they didn't have a hammer on board? I don't know. But here's the thing. It says that there was, that Dana's throat had been ripped out with a claw hammer. Now, Dana was a 17-year-old boy. But that's the thing. Where is the blood? Where is the blood to back that up, right? Where's the blood that's going to come through and, be there? If you tear someone's jugular, you cut that vein, it's going to go, there's a lot of blood, unless Dana was already dead. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be any blood, but your heart's not pumping. It's not going to be going out as much. So it's, who knows? Who fucking knows? All right, so it says this report is based on information sent to the FBI by other law enforcement, and is filled with rank misinformation and bullshit. Who was lying to whom and why? How do you know it's full of rank bullshit? This is where this website's getting a little bit hard to read, and it's getting a little bit annoying, because it's clearly biased without ever explaining itself. And then there's no summarization here, obviously. Okay, here it's claimed Tina was with Sue and her siblings all day. Yet everyone we know of says Tina was left by herself in Keddie, while everyone else was in Quincy. Also, why did Tina find the need to have so many hiding spaces? Who knows? Who knows why Tina had so many hiding spaces? Who freaking knows? Okay. And all right, so this is one we can actually read. To local authorities, additionally, more specific information is being developed to enable the Behavioral Sciences Unit to review the case as an effort to develop a psychological profile of the responsible person or persons, which may assist in local authorities in their investigation. So, obviously, let's bring this phone back up. Okay, so what we know, essentially, is that the FBI was bringing in a behavioral sciences unit. And that, I'm trying to remember, there's that show Mindhunters on Netflix, which is really solid, and they're developing the psychological profiles at the time, but I don't remember this is in the early 1980s. I don't remember if that's in the late 1970s or early 1980s, or whatnot. So let's take a look here at the timelines. I don't want to go look at the victims necessarily, because I feel like it's kind of whatever, but Okay, this is, again, all screenshots. I have no idea if this is going to be fucking legible. It may or may not be. All right. Okay, so a chronological series of events taken from investigative files going all the way back to April 1977. Now, this kind of plays in, this should be interesting. This could be very fascinating. So, April 1977, after Sue left Jim Sharp, she drove somewhere in Missouri where her mother-in-law lived. She stayed approximately 3 weeks and then came to Quincy. In May 1977, Sue Sharp and children rented space 27A at Claremont Tri-Park, formerly rented by her brother. Randall, name redacted, Sr., dated Sue a few times while she lived in Claremont. He had not seen her for over 1 year at the time of, I'm assuming, of her death. July 1979, Julian redacted attempts to rape Rhonda, who was a neighbor of Sharp's in Keddie. All right. So they'd already been in Keddie by 1979, but they'd only moved into the cabin in November of 1980. So maybe they were known around town. I don't know if it's a big town or not. 1979, October 1979. This time, 13 months before they moved into cabin 28. Lucia Shumway was Dana's counselor at foster home until early in the summer of 1980. Now, that's interesting. Dana, who was 17 at the time of his death, was in foster home. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Probably not, but that's something to look into. 1980, date unknown. Suspect Daniel French moves to Maggie W. Dana Wingate placed on probation 1 year before death, or 1 year before 187. Okay, so that's 187 is what that is. Jesus, that's like really callous. For slashing $7,000 worth of tires at Nugget Motors. Interesting. Dana at the age of 17 was a foster child and had a bit of a criminal mischief past. Makes me wonder if that has anything to do with what happened. Was the hit meant to be for Dana and just happened to take place at that particular house? Again, speculation. We have no idea, but it's something to consider. Now, David Grant says Johnny and Tim entered his house and stole a lid of marijuana on this date and again in December 1980. So David Grant needs to start locking up his shit. if you're gonna keep having your weed stolen by Johnny and Tim, then you gotta, I don't feel bad for you. Fool me once sort of thing. Kathy Gadu and Chuck Walk moved to Livermore after having lived together in Quincy. Don't know who they are. Hope we find out more information. Oh, wait, hold on. Where am I at? Okay. So, summer of 1980, downtown Trailer Park, someone in downtown Trailer Park says her daughter, blank, did not stay with Tina after the summer of 1980. Interesting. Carl Kostner and Michelle Matziak moved to Keddie. Doug Albin thinks Kautzer looks like one of the composites. Okay, so at this point, this is a person who's maybe a person of interest. November 1980, Sue Sharp and children moved to cabin 28 in Keddie. Now we have dates unknown. Richard and Walter Meeks are seen at Sharp residence 2 or 3 times. Okay, Joe Baze, or Baze, had been to the Sharp residence once. Sue Sharp takes Sheila to Oregon to have a baby. Sheila was the daughter that survived, the one that came home. Johnny stayed with Nina Meeks while his mother was gone. Now, wasn't Sheila like 14 or something? Interesting. I'm just saying it's somewhere in 1980 this happened. December 1980, David G. says that Johnny and Tim entered his house occupied with Rose Blank, a school bus driver, and stole a lid of marijuana. So December 1980, I'm assuming this is Johnny and Tim, who has been redacted. So clearly trying to establish that there was a mischief, that Johnny was involved in mischief. Same with Dana. That's maybe one of the reasons why they found each other, or maybe it's one of the reasons why you've got you've got a foster kid and you've got a kid that's moved around from a failed marriage between his parents that are getting themselves caught up in this type of shit. Not saying they deserve to die, because clearly they didn't, but that could be a reason as to why this house was targeted the way that it was. Now, stole a lid of marijuana and also stole one in June 1980. Blank father paid his son's half, but Johnny never paid his $25 debt. Okay. So, so Tim's dad paid his half of the lid of marijuana, but Johnny never paid back his $25. So don't tell me someone committed a quadruple homicide ultimately over $25. That to me feels excessive. Johnny Sharp was with a guy named Wolf, who now lives in Portal, and it was Wolf who took the marijuana without John's knowledge from Rose and Quincy. From Rose, who was the Quincy school bus driver. Joe Crivello told Rose who was involved, and Johnny and Wolf worked the matter out. Okay, so apparently they all kind of came together amicably to determine how to handle the stolen marijuana situation. Good to know. January 1981, Steve McKim left a duffel bag and contained sunglasses. This is like, what does this have to do with anything? I don't know if this has anything to do with, I mean, it's kind of established. I think this is just a timeline of people who fucking live there, to be honest with you. Let's jump ahead to the, okay, here we go. April 1st, 1981. This is days before. These are more people. Yeah, this is some weird stuff. You know, I'm all right, BG, I'll catch you later, dude. Yeah, this is kind of weird because there's a lot going on. There's not a lot here. There's not a lot here in the timeline. So this is the thing with this website that I find to be interesting is it talks a little bit about it, but not giving a great deal of information. I feel like let's take a look here at the, case synopsis. How about that one? All right. Maybe we should have started with this one. Probably. Because this gives us at least something to go through that maybe is cohesive to an extent. All right. So, in November of 1980, Sue Sharp, known as Sue, moved her family from a tiny cramped trailer in Quincy, California, to the comparably large 3-bedroom cabin 28 in nearby Keddie. A Navy wife who had been stationed around the country, she and her 5 kids had been kicked out of their Connecticut home by her abusive husband, James, in 1979. They moved across the United States visiting family and old neighbors before settling in Quincy, where they rented a trailer that her brother had just vacated. Despite Keddie being a rundown, low-rent railroad town in decline, the kids had more room in the cabin, and their yard was in the forest, stream, and railroad tracks. Okay, so that makes more sense to me. It's like, got the 5 kids, trying to, get away from an abusive husband, move to a place where there's affordable living, even though it is a rundown, low-rent railroad town long in decline. Something. Johnny, the oldest of 15, took an unfurnished room downstairs of the small utility area in the partial basement. And with no internal stairwell or bathroom, he used the back stairs or the front door to access the main cabin, but was otherwise happy with his relative independence. The younger boys, Rick, who was age 10, and Greg, age 5, shared a bedroom at the front of the cabin, adjacent to the living room. When Sue and her youngest daughter, Tina, shared the rear bedroom opposite the kitchen. So I was wrong about who was taking the front room. So Sue and her youngest daughter shared the rear bedroom. The younger boys shared the front room, but there were 3 beds in the front room. Right? If there were 3, here's the thing. So there were 5 people that were 6 people that were living there, and it's a minute detail. It's just I don't need to get caught up on it. Let's see. In mid-February, the elder daughter Sheila joined the family after giving birth to a baby in Oregon. Okay, I was right. She was 14. Which was swiftly put up for adoption. At the time, Sue slept in the twin bed while the girl shared the queen. Or sometimes Sue slept on the pull-out couch in the living room by the TV. Okay, so they intermixed around in the pull-out bed. Times were hard in Plumas, as they had always been, and Sue had to make ends meet with the $250 she received from the Navy, which just covered rent. Man, rent for $250. That would have been the time. Food stamps and other social welfare. And the stipend she received for being enrolled in CETA, a federal education program of the era. She had been described as quite reserved, a woman who primarily kept to herself. An FBI document dated a month after the murders depicted her as much as her neighbors had, saying here she was not a fancy dresser and was best described by casual associates and neighbors as a loner. Sharp had one close girlfriend, a neighbor woman with the last name of Meeks. Sharp's only known source of income came from her position as a CETA worker, wherein she was paid to attend school, the Feather River Community College, where she was to learn a business trade. She was described as being a good student who studied hard and obtained good grades, but who was a loner and who did not participate in the social gatherings such as coffee breaks. She had no other source of income other than $250 a month. Or sorry, I should say no other known source of income. Other than $250 a month loft minute check from the U.S. Navy via her husband. Prior to her death, Sharp had no criminal record, nor was she known to local authorities. Well, it could be one of those old stories here where she's working this job or she's getting enough money to get by, but not enough money to feed herself, her children, her grandchild. Or, well, the grandchild went up for adoption. But it's one of those things where maybe she was, maybe there was a situation involving some of the drugs. We know that pot was a thing. Her son was stealing pot. Maybe there was a deal situation going on. Not out of the question, but then again, there's clearly nothing here to suggest that would have been the case. Now, Stu still managed to date with some frequency, and while her romantic ambitions remain unclear, several of her boyfriends simply seemed at odds with her background and temperament. Plumas is a county of disparate social and economic classes, a place where the American dream went to die decades ago. Well, that's peachy. Opportunities to better oneself, much less climb the ladder, are slim to none. Given the pool of eligibles, Sue was not exactly fending off prosperous beaus who appealed to her sensibilities. Religion and drinking have been cited as a reason she broke off relationships, and while Sue was no teetotaler, she apparently didn't fancy too much of either. One of her suitors proposed marriage on the first date, according to one report of questionable veracity and dubious intent, seemingly filed to divert attention. Sue was in a vitriolic and abusive relationship with a man shortly before her murder, climaxing, odd choice of words, in a loud argument in her front yard 6 weeks prior to the murders. Filled with rage and coarse language, yet another boyfriend was killed a month after the murders while being chased from a bar by deputies. So she dated a lot of shitty men. That's not uncommon. That's not uncommon in anything else. So that's definitely something that that's not uncommon for anything at this point. Is to see that. And what we've got here is a person who kept to herself but dated a bunch of shitty dudes. And maybe one of them did have something to do with it, right? So there's definitely that. But let's go on here. So it's been claimed that many key persons of interest either dated Sue or had their advances rebuffed by her, or were simply infatuated with her. Her most recent known boyfriend, Daryl, had been introduced to her a week prior to her death, and they'd spent much of the time with each other in the ensuing days, either at his nearby trailer or at area bars playing pool and drinking beer. Their last date was 2 days prior to the crime, after which Daryl left Keddie to spend the weekend with family in Paradise, California. So basically, that's his alibi. He had nothing to do with it. Okay. On Sunday morning, April 12th, 1981, Sheila Sharp woke up to the next door cabin 27, where she had spent the night with neighbors, the Seabolts. Having decided to attend church with them that morning, about 7:45, she went to her cabin 15 feet to the south to get her Sunday clothes. Upon opening the front door, she saw 3 bodies on the floor, furthest away covered with a blanket. She also saw a knife on the floor between the doorway and the closet, and the closest body bent at such an angle she mistook for an open pocket knife. She ran screaming back to the Seabolts. Sheila and Mrs. Seabolt went to the nearest working phone across the street at the landlord's and called the sheriff's office. So just to give you an idea of I guess how poor this area was, and this kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier with the whole phone cord. They went to the nearest working phone, which was across the street at the landlord's. So was the phone in the cabin working? I don't. It doesn't necessarily matter after nearly 40 years, but something to just question. As the Plumas County Sheriff's Office dispatched a car to the scene, Sheila and Zanita Stiebold returned to 27 and, with the help of Zanita's son Jamie, knocked on the boy's bedroom window. Jamie pulled three. Oh, okay, there we go. Jamie pulled 3 unharmed kids from that window: Greg, Rick, and neighbor Justin Smart, who had spent the night on a sleepover. Oh, that's a fucking new. That was not talked about anywhere else. Jamie then went to the rear of 28 up the stairs, inside through the back door, which was open or left ajar by the killers. After looking around and searching for survivors, he rejoined the others outside. Soon the sheriff's squads would be on hand. Okay, that explains something, because when I was looking at the pictures of the situation, they said that the boys were removed, and I'm like, is this where the bodies came from? This made no sense. But no. There were 6 people, 7 people in that cabin at the time of the killing. There were, there were 7 people in that cabin, right? You had the mom, you had Johnny, you had Dana, you had Tina, you had the boys that were in that rear bedroom. That was very, very, very close to where the bodies were discovered. I mean, they must have been dead asleep or whatever. But I mean, that's super crazy, because they found Greg, Rick, and the neighbor Justin Smart. The 3 boys were pulled out of that room. Like bringing this up at the crime scene, right? Bringing this back up to everything. Looking at just the here. Okay, so what you've got here is you got the living room right here to the bottom left. Okay, and this is where the bodies were discovered, right? Well, in the boys' bedroom, immediately to the right, you had the bunk beds and the sleeping cot, and then the window. The boys were asleep here. The 3 boys were passed out in this room. I mean, like, if who was screaming that at 1 o'clock in the morning? It must have been Tina. That's the whole thing. It absolutely, positively must have been Tina at that point, because it's the only thing I can think of. So, it's it's definitely something. It's definitely an interesting case when you start breaking it down, because there's a lot of stuff here that really makes you question how it's done. All right, so looking at the law enforcement arrive. So here we go. The first member of the law enforcement to arrive shortly after 8 a.m. was Deputy Hank Clement, who did a quick search of the cabin, confirming the murders. At 8:25, Sergeant Jerry Shaver arrived, and Clement, talking with a group of residents in front of 28, told him there appeared to be a triple murder. After Shaver and Clement entered the front door and reviewed the scene together, Shaver placed Clement on point in the front of the cabin. Upon asking the dispatcher to inform Sheriff Sylvester Doug Thomas and send out investigators, Shaver began interviewing witnesses at approximately 8:30 in the morning. Sheriff's Office Don Stoy was called by dispatch, who told the report to a triple homicide, or was told to report a triple homicide in Keddie. Also informed was Assistant Sheriff Ken Shanks. At 8:45 a.m., Don Davis, Sue's brother, arrived and met with Shaver in front of cabin 28. Don gave Shaver the details on Sue and the family about her pending divorce and the move from Connecticut. Davis also detailed how Sue's estranged husband Jim hasn't visited the family since November of 1979, and how Sue refused to give Jim the new address or phone number after moving to Keddie. He supplied the names and ages of Sue's kids, then mentioned Sheila's baby, giving the baby's father's name and address, and mentioning that he hung around the gaming arcade in East Quincy. It's those pesky gamers, man. It's always those pesky gamers. They're always getting into trouble. They're always doing some shit, man. They're always doing some crazy shit. So yeah, that's okay. That gives us an idea of what's going on, at least. When Shanks and Stoy arrived around 9:30 in the morning, Clement was again inside the cabin and came out to greet them. After a briefing from Shaver and Clement, Stoy and Shanks began photographing the crime scene and collecting evidence. Shaver returned to interviewing witnesses in the cabin's picket fence yard, while Clement was dispatched to do a cursory house-by-house welfare check of the area. Sheriff's officers went on investigating the crime scene for several days, and while the crime scene reports aren't available, it's clear many reports don't match each other from the facts, and that Stoy's report, written to cover both his and Shanks' accounts of events, seemed to have been doctored to indicate that the sheriff's office immediately understood something evidence shows they didn't realize for hours: Tina Sharp was missing. Again, this particular write-up of it is entirely subjective. By noon, the California Department of Justice, a helicopter from Sacramento, was hovering over Keddie's, taking photographs, even capturing on film what appears to be the killers sneaking out of the town the back way to avoid notice. Where's the evidence of that? This person, whoever wrote this damn thing, I swear to God, they're driving me nuts with this kind of shit. We're either PA Crim of Harry Bradley, or see a DOJ special agents from the Bureau of Organized Crime and Criminal Intelligence on the chopper. Either way, two unreliable mafia agents were seemingly instantaneously on scene, distorting the facts and destroying any chance of arresting suspects or solving the case. This is it. This person is like really pushing this that a mob was inside. Okay, now let's talk about the bodies, because this is going to be interesting. So in the front room of cabin 28 were the bodies. Closest and parallel to the door, supine on the floor, was Johnny's corpse. His feet inches from the south wall, and head nearest to the doorway. Inches away to his left, lay the cheap table steak knife, which Sheila had noticed. 2 feet away and parallel to Johnny's body lay that of Dana Wingate, a friend who was asleep over at cabin 28. Laying prone, the head was barely resting on the corner of a cushion, which had been removed from the couch. Adjacent to Dana's body was Sue Sharp's on its right side, with the head by the base of the couch and the feet near Dana's left arm. Sue's body was covered with a blanket and sheet, later determined to have come from Tina's bed. Okay, so we did see that there were bloody fingerprints or blood. There was some blood found on the doorway leading into the back bedroom, or the rear bedroom, which is where Sue shared it with Tina. So okay, here we go. So Johnny's hands rested his abdomen, taped tightly at the wrists with several loops of white cloth medical tape. His ankles were wrapped twice and tightly knotted with the white extension cord. The cord stretched neatly parallel to the base of the disturbed TV stand when turned abruptly 90 degrees, leading to Dana's ankles, where it was loosely looped once and knotted. Around one of Dana's hiking boots was one loop of medical tape. There was also a half loop of tape on his right boot, but the tape appeared to have been broken. Likewise, the tape around his wrists was broken, with the broken bands of tape connected only to his right wrist. The tape around the stronger Dana was also much wider than the tape binding the younger, smaller Johnny. Okay, a little bit hard. Basically, everyone was kind of taped up is what I'm getting at here. Sue's ligatures were by far the most complicated. Her wrists and ankles were bound with the narrow medical tape relatively loosely. Over the tape on her wrists was a tight loop of electrical cord, knotted several times. Over that was another loop of stronger electrical cord, knotted and connected to a third length of cord, which was extended and tightly looped around her ankles. Seems like they kind of hog-tied her is what I kind of get from this. And yet another length of wire superfluously tied her ankles together. The cord between her ankles and wrists was so taut her legs and knees were drawn together. She was also gagged with a bandana and her panties, with several lengths of med tape applied on top of them. So she was bound with a pair of her underwear and taped around her head. I mean, obviously, okay. So to be continued. How is this to be continued? The damn case is fucking, old and shit. Like, it's almost 40 years old. I don't know what the hell this person's doing. So, okay. So that's kind of where we're at with this at the moment here. This is the hammer. What's this important thing here? What are they saying? Oh, geez. Okay. So the person who wrote this website has been trying to raise money, to raise $2,200 to run it. Okay. Oh, that is what it is. Okay. So I'm kind of here's this mob connection thing here, because this is very, very interesting. Someone here, I like this comment here. You need a fucking hobby like painting, crocheting, collecting shit, finding Jimmy Hoffa's killer. There's a lot there with this that's a little over the top, but essentially, from what I can gather, this person, whoever wrote this website, which it looked interesting going into it, clearly it's a little bit crazy, has a belief that there's a mob connection here. The person believes that it was a hit. They don't know why, but DOJ, organized crime officers were hovering overhead in a helicopter, allowing the killers to potentially get away. There are some things with that are just a little bit on the odd side, but let's take a look here at this people crime. Okay, This one might be a little bit less on the subjective, more of the objective, which would be, I think, okay. And yeah, and I'm like, that was just some crazy shit. Okay, so more than 35 years after a teenage girl came home to find her family brutally slain in their resort cabin. I love they say resort cabin as if it's not like a hovel, because it basically was. Police say the cold case is heating up. Now, in the 1981 Keddie cabin murders of 3 family members and a teenage friend shook the small Sierra Nevada mountain communities of Keddie and Quincy in Northern California, beginning a mystery that lingers more than 3 decades later. Who murdered the Sharp family? So authorities once again are asking the question, reviving the investigation. Here are 5 things to know about their work. And this is okay. This gives us a bit more of an update of what's happening, and that's pretty good. The scene suggests more than one killer. That I would agree with based upon the nature of it, right? Based upon how the bodies were tied up, how the people were killed. The lack of blood, the lack of evidence, it does feel like there was a 2-person job, or at least more than one person. Now, on April 12th, 1981, 14-year-old Sheila Sharp was returning from a sleepover when she discovered 3 dead bodies in her family's cabin at the Keddie Resort. Her 36-year-old single mother, her brother Johnny, and Johnny's friend Dana, all had been sound and suffered extreme violence. But see, they say extreme violence, and I know that it's a bit of a hyperbolic statement, but the blood from the crime scene photos don't necessarily suggest extreme violence. But then again, there's been no description, at least on that website, of exactly how the bodies, what happened to them. They said like the one thing was a speculation of Dana's throat being torn out by the claw of a hammer, which I do feel there would have been a lot of blood. There would have been a lot of blood from that had he been alive. But then again, being the fact that the 17-year-old who did have a criminal record at the time and had been busted for slashing $7,000 worth of tires, he may have angered the wrong people, and that could have led that. It could have been if I'm saying anything here, as weird as it sounds, I know people, like I said at the beginning of this, like, oh, what's going on with the dad? What's going on with the dad? To me, it kind of feels a little bit more like, what's going on with this Dana kid? What the fuck was he into? What kind of shit happened there? That's kind of where that's a little bit where I'm at right now. Now, Sheila's 12-year-old sister Tina was missing. The girl's skull was found in the woods 3 years later, some 50 miles away in another county. And that's the thing. What happened with Tina, right? Tina is clearly the key. She's kind of the linchpin here. I have a feeling, as odd as it seems, that they. Because it goes on, because look into this next segment here. Adding to the mystery, Sheila's younger brothers, Greg and Rick, ages 5 and 10, at the time were asleep and unharmed in an adjacent bedroom of the cabin, along with a friend, Justin Smart. Okay, so you had 3 boys in the room, as we talked about. Those guys were there, they were unharmed. Here's kind of the theory I'm working with here, and again, I could be wrong, but this is just kind of where my mind is going. What you've got the killers. I think the killers were there to target Dana. I think that they're there to target Dana. They were, we know that Sheila slept in the sofa bed from time to time. Or Sue slept in the sofa bed. But it was Saturday night. Maybe she didn't want to pull the sofa bed. She was sleeping on the couch. Obviously, the guys came in. They got into they broke into the house quietly because they didn't wake up the 3 boys that were literally in like the next room, like the one wall separating them. There's further distance back to the Tina's room. No one went in there. It's possible that they got in there first and they grabbed Sheila. Or Sue. Sorry, I keep getting the names mixed up. They grabbed Sue. They tied her up so she wouldn't be able to make, because given the amount of tying up that happened to her, it indicates to me that she was the first person that they encountered. And they may not have expected to find her in the living room. They may have expected to find her in the back bedroom. But they clearly got her, and then they went back in order to go and get the sheet in order to cover her up later on, because she was found. Which leads me to believe that that's when they discovered Tina. That they discovered Tina asleep in there as they were going to find a sheet, and they grabbed her. Probably a last minute grab her, run and go sort of thing. Then they killed her so she wouldn't say anything. It would have been easier to grab her than to kill another body and maybe clean it up. because I said the lack of blood seems a little bit odd to me, given the type of extreme violence that they suffered. This is all kind of weird shit. Again, this is all kind of absolute speculation at this point. So there's that. And so we've got that. Now, according to the crime scene report, the boys' bodies on the living room floor were bloodied around their heads and necks. Johnny was face up with his hands and feet bound by electrical cord that was also wrapped around Dana's feet. Sue was covered by a yellow blanket. Her hands and feet were bound by electrical wiring. Now, that's okay. Look at this little detail here. Johnny was face up with his hands and feet bound by electrical cord that was also wrapped around Dana's feet. Now, why would you do that? Why would you bound them both together? It makes it so they can't get away. That one can't get up and run for help. They're bound to another person. There's like the dead weight angle there. Like they're not both going to be able to get up and get out. So it's going to keep them there, which does indicate that this is definitely something that's more professional. It's not just a standard, kidnapping and robbing or whatever. This is a person who has done this kind of stuff before, or at least knew about this from something else. That's kind of where I'm at. Now, Sue was covered by a yellow blanket and her hands and feet were bound by electrical wiring. Obviously, like I said, I think that they discovered Tina when they went back in to go and take the blanket. The three were killed using knives and a hammer. A bent steak knife lay on the floor, and a butcher knife and claw hammer, also both bloodied, were side by side on the small wooden table next to the entry, next to the entry to the kitchen. That's the thing is hitting somebody with a hammer in the head, like in the temple, could kill him. Right? I mean, like, it's like a blunt smack to the head. It's just going to kind of take him down. And it doesn't make a lot of noise, depending. But the knife could have been used to finish the job. So there's definitely that. I mean, again, this is all just kind of what I'm thinking. Whoever did this, there was more than one person to have all that blood all over them, says Doug Thomas, now 76, who was the Plumas County Sheriff at the time of the murders, leading the investigation, but who soon moved to another job and has since retired. Whoever did this, and there was more than one person, had to have blood all over them. But based upon what I could see from the crime scene, it didn't look like it was that much blood. You know what I mean? Like, but then again, maybe the spattering that we saw was because they were taking all the blood. I just feel like there would have been more. I mean, clearly there was enough blood on them in order to drip around the different place. So maybe there's more than I'm thinking. Obviously, there's probably more than I'm thinking. So this is the Kevin. So it says here that the primary suspects are dead, but authorities are still pursuing justice. Yeah, okay. Among those questioned in the killings were Sue's neighbor, Marty Smart, who lived 2 cabins away with his wife and Justin Smart's mother. It emerged that Marty was angry about Sue's interference in his troubled marriage. Authorities also interviewed Marty's ex-con friend, Bo Bobette, who had moved in with Marty. Now, that's what the other website was trying to say, that Bo was a hitman and an enforcer for the Vegas and Chicago mob. But again, like I said, this felt like a professional. This felt professional based upon tying up the people, how the bodies were discovered, and everything else. It felt professional. So if this Bo character is in fact a hitman, is a hitter for the mob, and has done this kind of stuff before, why would he do it so close to the house? Why would he do it? He literally lived next door. Literally lived as a neighbor. Why would you do that? It doesn't feel professional, right? It just doesn't feel professional. Now, during a recently revived investigation, Sheriff's investigator Mike Gamberg was made aware of a letter written by Marty to Marilyn shortly after the crimes, saying, "I've paid the price for your love, and now that I've brought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through. Or now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through. Great. What else do you want?" Now, that's an interesting one, because she does say here that she did tell people that she doesn't actually recall receiving the letter. She says she learned of it long afterward by investigators, but she recognized her ex-husband's handwriting. Thomas, the retired sheriff, who also says about the letter, had only heard about the letter in recent months. Now, is that telling the truth, or is that just using that as a scare tactic, right? I mean, if he was mad, if Marty here was mad at at Sue for interfering in his troubled marriage, and he wanted to get back at his ex-wife Marilyn, he could just make the claim that he killed her. People do that kind of shit all the time. I'm not saying this guy isn't the killer. It's very well that he probably could be, but it could also be a tactic at this point that would just be used to scare her. So yeah, it says that in this. Okay. So Gamberg further tracked down a therapist in Reno, Nevada, to whom Marty allegedly confessed after the killings, and who told Gamberg he was shocked to learn that investigators at the time didn't use a confession to solve the crimes. That is interesting. So there were some theories that Marty's friend Bo was involved, and there were theories that other people in Keddie were involved, Thomas says. Of Marty and Bo, he says, the only thing I knew is that they hung out together. We questioned them extensively. If you question them extensively and you weren't able to shake something loose, outside of maybe like circumstantial stuff, it's difficult to get a conviction. And again, you have to remember that when this information goes before a district attorney that they're looking to file the charges in order to like place someone under arrest or get the arrest warrant, they only do this for the most part if they know they have enough of a case in order to win. So as weird as that sounds, like if they don't try to scattershot this shit in the dark, they try to make sure they have enough evidence in order to get to basically guarantee a conviction in most cases. So who knows that they didn't want to, waste the county resources on trying to solve the murder of, 3 people in a cabin. That was like in a basically a rundown railroad town, I mean, that kind of shit happens. They weigh the pros and the cons of the cost. And if there's no money there, no one's going to care. So I see in the chat there's suggesting that it might be a cop. That's entirely an idea. Now with nothing in those first weeks tied to the crime, Thomas says neither were charged. Both left the area. Bo died in 1988 and Marty died in 2006. Yet Gamberg and current Sheriff Greg Hagwood believe the evidence leans towards those 2 as culprits, saying if a case needs to be pinned there, we'll pin it. I'm a little bit confused on that one. So saying if the case needs to be pinned there, is that like you're at this point you just want to seek some justice, and so you're just looking to pin it there in order to make the cold case go away, to have it not be part of your filings anymore? It does sound a little bit, I mean, granted, it's only a snippet from an interview, so the context of what he's saying precisely could be on the up and up, but I also could see that being used against him. Now, Thomas isn't so sure. He says it's very easy to say somebody's guilty when they're dead. They can't defend themselves. I don't think either one of them was involved. And that's the whole point I'm trying to get to here is if we need to pin it on him, we'll pin it on him. Yeah, but that could be really, really, really bad, man. It could be really, really, really bad. Now, the investigators have a personal stake in the case. Keddie and Quincy are 7 miles apart. In the larger community of Quincy, with a population of just under 2,000, Sheriff Hagwood was a schoolmate of victims Johnny and Dana. And the summer before the murders, they'd all worked together as teenagers on a painting crew. Hagwood's mother was a teacher who had Tina in class. Okay, you can see that he wants to bring justice to his friends. I get that. Hagwood had also a childhood friend who lived in Keddie Cabin 28 long before the Sharps moved in there, saying, I stayed at that cabin probably a dozen times. So he has an emotional connection. I get that. Now, Gamberg knew the boys as well. As a martial arts instructor at the time, he taught both Johnny and Dana, and says Dana was at his home the day before he died. Says it struck this community harder than anything. And I think it struck him harder than anything. Right? I do. I think it struck him harder than anything. And that's why he wants to see this thing come to an end. Whether or not that's clouding his judgment in terms of trying to, bring this thing to an end, whether or not he's trying to do that, we have no fucking idea. But at the same time, you can see that there's very much a personal investment into this case and very much personal investment into trying to solve it. But it could get in the way of him. I don't want to see 2 men who've done nothing wrong have a crime pinned on them. Now, Hagwood became sheriff in 2010, and in June 2013, he brought Gamberg back from retirement to organize the boxes of Keddie reports and evidence with an eye towards reviving the case. Marty Smart's letter was an early rediscovery. But if Marty Smart's letter was an early rediscovery, why in the ass was it not brought up before back in the day? He didn't die until 2006. That was 12 years ago. This shit happened in 1981, so that should have been something they were looking at right away. I don't understand why, like, this is, it was an early rediscovery. The dude had been dead for freaking 9 years at that point, or 7 years at that point. Now, just as important, Hamburg and Hagwood wonder if they've recovered another of the murder weapons. As reports of the renewed investigation went public, Gamberg learned of a man who, using a metal detector, had found a hammer in a pond near the Keddie property. And the steel and blue-handled claw hammer, now recovered, exactly matched the description of a hammer that Marty told investigators he'd lost. It is now being tested for trace DNA or blood residue. And that would be the hammer that we saw on the other website there. Go make it to the front here. You can kind of see on the... bring that up here. So this is the hammer that they found in the bottom of the lake. Claw hammer that Marty had said that he had lost. Okay, so we have an idea there. This is what it looks like. So now Gamberg also found in the investigation files apparently an unopened envelope with a recording of a 911 call. When Tina remains were found in 1984 on the 3rd anniversary of the murders, her skull was unidentified. But that anonymous 911 caller said it was Tina's before the medical examiner confirmed it through dental records. It's my feeling that either the caller was told or he was involved in some way. The tape, too, has been turned over for voice comparisons of audio or with audio of earlier suspects. Why wasn't this put out there? Right? Like I understand that sometimes some things end up getting them slip between the cracks. Right? I get that. I get that. But we're talking 2 pieces of evidence here. A letter of basically admitting that they had done it from Marty. Okay. Then you've got someone calling in and saying like to 911 and saying, "Oh, this is the body of Tina. Her skull was discovered," right? And before dental records could confirm it, someone admitted that this was her body, therefore later on being verified by the medical examiner. Like it's just, and it was an unopened envelope. Again, I think they just stopped caring, right? I think they stopped caring. I mean, obviously the sheriff who went to school with these guys who knew them, to him, it's personal. I get that. And for that, I actually I'm very impressed that he's continuing on, and he's been able to uncover a couple extra things and everything else, which is cool. But you could tell that the sheriff's department gave so little fucks about these people. You could tell that from just reading this, just the overlooking of shit. Now, whether or not the Bo guy was a fucking mob hitter and organized crime came on in and were like, let this fucker go because we need him to bring down some larger fish sort of thing. He died fucking 7 years later and shit. So we don't know. It just makes no sense to me, but it just, that drives me up the fucking wall. That just drives me up the damn wall. Anyway, so investigators can confirm the killers, or people can confirm the killers' identities. Now, a vital thread, Gamberg says, is who knew about Tina's remains placed in an isolated wooded area in neighboring Butte County, and who may have helped put them there. There are people locally who know more than they've said, Hagwood tells People, and I believe we've identified some of them, and we know who they are, and we know where they are. And I have every confidence that they either participated after the fact or they have firsthand information. It's obviously a worthwhile pursuit. There's not an expiration date on homicides, and to the extent that we have surviving siblings and family members, it is our fundamental obligation to them to understand who did this and why. And I agree with that too. And if there are people out there who might have firsthand knowledge or have been a part of the dumping of this body or the murder of the 12-year-old girl, they definitely need to come forward. I mean, cop a fucking plea deal out the ass, but and I'm pretty sure the sheriff would be like, I'll fucking go to the goddamn DA and fucking make a goddamn recommendation. You get me a damn deal, because you could tell this is personal for him. This is his fucking rosebud. He wants to solve this shit. But he said, how close are they to solving the case? He says, I don't know. I know we're closer than we've ever been. And this episode, People Magazine Investigates, did air on Discovery. But this is from, when is this from? This is from, a year and a half ago. So going back to these guys right here, these are the 2 suspects. Obviously, I think it's referring to Marty and to Bo. I think this is who we see at this point in time. Now, we've been going over this case now for about an hour and a half. I think it's been pretty interesting. I do want to know your guys' thoughts on this one. So we'll spend the next few minutes going over your thoughts or your opinions. because we think we've got 196 people watching right now, which is fantastic for just a random middle of the night murder mystery stream. If you guys haven't already, please thumbs up the video. Help it get to help get it to 100 likes. We're close. I think we can do it. I think we can do it and shit. And we can definitely do that. So hold on. Gang Reaper says there's been creepy confessions on 4chans from stuff like this. Are you talking like this direct case? Are you talking just people in 4chan saying that shit? Because it could be whatever. The guy on the left looks like Teddy Roosevelt. He does. Yeah, he does look like Teddy Roosevelt a little bit, doesn't he? Let's see. There's another article here. I'm looking to see what's in the article real quick. Not too much. Oh, okay. It basically just recaps what I just read. So there's that. But yeah, I think it's an interesting case, but I stand by my thoughts there. I stand by my thoughts that the sheriffs just didn't care. I think that's why the current sheriff, Sheriff Hagwood, I think he's the reason why this is getting as far as it is. I think he cares. I think it's his personal mission in life. I just hope he doesn't, because he did make the comment about pinning it on them, if they need to have it pinned on them, and I think that's a big part of it. So, is mayonnaise an instrument of what? So, oh, there's been like top creepy confessions from killers on 4chan. Yeah, I think I've done some stuff on that before. But ultimately, looking at this particular case, now, do you guys have any, for those of you who've been around for a while, and I know some of you guys got in a little bit late, okay, Smash Fox here says it was probably Marty and Bo. It was probably them. It was probably them. I would go as far as to say, it does seem to lean towards that direction right now. But why? Why kidnap Tina and then kill her 50 miles away and dump her body? Right? Why do that? Now, speculation, again, because this whole thing's been speculation. Speculation has been that, at least from my end, it would be to throw off the scent. Because we don't have a motive. We don't have a motive. There's been no motive yet. The person who wrote that really fucking cringy website, their idea of a motive, their entire thought process is that it was a mob hit, right? That it was a mob related thing, and that the cops looked the other way because the mob, right? That's what they've been kind of pimping. That's their whole idea. I don't agree with that. Here's the thing. If Bo worked as an enforcer for the Vegas and Chicago mob, and people knew who the fuck he was and everything else, and they went after him that way, like that could have been, helping out a butt. Kidnap the girl, take her out somewhere, shoot her in the head or kill her, leave her body. They're never going to fucking find it. They're going to think that it's probably the ex-husband who came in, killed them, took the girl, and left. But it doesn't make a lot of sense that the ex-husband would come in and kill his own kid. And if it was the ex-husband who would come in, right, who did it, then there would have probably been shouting, and the three boys in the other room would have probably been identified. They probably would have woken up. But the mere fucking fact that there were three people, three young boys that were feet away through, this thing didn't have probably thick walls, right? The cabin didn't have thick walls, but they were just on the other side of a wall. And they did not wake up at all. It wasn't until the morning when their neighbors had to go and get them out of their window. That to me tells me that this is far more professional than just some random burglary. So yeah, it probably could have been Marty and Bo. I mean, Marty essentially confessed to it in terms of the letter sent to his ex-wife that she never got. He confessed to it to a therapist in Reno. But the thing is, they knew about this shit, and he died fucking 12 years ago, but there was a long time. I think that once he left town, I think once he got out of there, they just stopped looking. I think that's what it boils down to. If a guy named Bo was involved, he did it. Maybe they raped her and killed her. Well, we don't know if they raped her. Craig Waters claimed much later that he drove John and Dana part of the way. Part of the way for what? You got me a little bit confused there. What's the part of the way? I'm a little bit confused there. Who said that? Mark Peterson. Who is Craig Walters? I'll take a quick Google search on that one. Let's see here. Keddie Murders. Okay. Okay, so here's a post from 2012. I'm just quickly vetting it before I show it. If it brings it up here, it's going back to that fucking website again. 'Cause they got a forum. They got a forum of things. So of course it was Marty. Wouldn't matter because he's dead. He can't bring justice to a corpse. No, that's true. Okay. Okay, so we got all right, we got one thing here. We'll bring this up. We'll definitely bring this up here and we'll take a look right quick and shit. Okay, so this is Keddie 28. This is the same website. This is their forums. This is from DMAC, the person who runs the website. Keddie Murders, okay, Wikipedia page, and Craig says, I hadn't checked the discussion section on Keddie Murders Wikipedia page in some time, but evidently Craig blew a gasket for 4 or 5 months ago and deleted what he'd written before. Okay, so it says here that Craig speaks out. There is no point for myself to lie, and I've said things that happen all the time in Quincy and Keddie, which include details about the Keddie driveway and gravel area, kitty corner of Keddie driveway, where my apartment was at Feather River, and how I became friends with John Sharp and Dana Wingate, and even went to Feather River College with Sue Sharp. Some have said I inserted himself into the murders, and again, I have no reason to do this, as you know where I come from, and very rich and prominent family. There is no need for myself to insert myself and bring disrespect, dishonor, or bring such attention to myself and my family. I no longer wanted anything to do with this case, and I've had enough with the ridicule and grief due to 2 of my friends being murdered, which has been made even worse by his accusers that I am a liar and attention getter. Okay, so you know that, so you know DMAC, DeviantArt, is not porn, and it is vor, which is a lot different than that. You are twisted. Okay, I don't know what the fuck this is. I don't know what the fuck that is. Okay. What in the ass is this shit? This is okay. All right. So that was kind of an odd one. I don't know. That's I have no idea. So anyway, yeah, that's some weird shit right there. Okay. That last part there, I guess scratch that because that made no fucking sense. When you start talking about like weird art on DeviantArt, I'm like, no. Okay, this isn't a Medicare live stream. We're not going into the DeviantArt shit here. But the truth detector says it's Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian. Nah, that would require Cenk to actually do something. All right, so we've been up now for an hour and a half. Obviously, I think I've kind of come to the end of this particular unsolved murder, but I do appreciate you guys checking it out. I do want to do more of these. You know, these are more fun to me, I think, than a lot of other stuff that I'm doing on the channel right now. So we might see a lot more of these. If you guys have unsolved mysteries that you want me to take a look at here and you have information, be sure to send over to mundanemat.com/submit. In the meantime, be sure to keep an eye out on the channel for the same kind of news stories, and hopefully we'll do more with this stuff. I might pull this one and upload it to the vlog channel, just because I'm trying not to fuck with the YouTube algorithm in that particular regard. So I'll do that probably, and I will talk to you guys later, and have a good one, and peace out.